in our previous session? Can anyone tell me? Can anyone tell me what we have learned in our previous session? Guys, respond.
This meeting is being recorded.
Good morning.
The recording has stopped. This meeting is being
Good
recorded.
evening, all. Can you see my screen? Right. Guys, in the last session, we have seen how to create a Jenkins job which will perform build and deployment of our application. Got it? Build means it is going to download the source code from the Git repository. It will compile and it will package that application as a WAR file. Once that packaging is completed, that means build process got completed for our project. Then we are going to deploy that project into Tomcat server. Here, Tomcat server is running in EC2 virtual machine. So from the Jenkins job, we are deploying that WAR file into Tomcat server. By default, Jenkins is running on the port number 8080 and the Tomcat port number is also 8080. So what we have done is we have changed the Tomcat port number in server.xml. And in order to do the deployment from the Jenkins to the Tomcat directly, there should be one user in the Tomcat with a permission manager script. So we have done that. We have added that permission also in the tomcat-users.xml. And finally, we are able to do build and deployment automation by using Jenkins. Got it. Fine, guys. Now, so if the build and deployment got failed, so do you know how to check the log of the build? Do you know how to check the log of the build? If the build and deployment got failed, do you know how to check that log? Do you know how to check that log? Build log? Yes. So when the build is started, there we can see console out build number will be generated. When you click on that build number, console output option will be available. So when you click on that console output, it will show you what happened in that build and what is the error that you can figure out by using that log file. Okay. Good. Fine. Now, do you know what is build periodically? Do you know what is build periodically option? If you want to execute the build given frequent intervals, so for every minute, for every hour, I want to execute my job, then we can go for build periodically. What is poll SCM, guys? Could you please tell me what is the poll SCM concept in the Jenkins job? Any idea? What is the poll SCM concept in the Jenkins? Anyone having idea? Poll SCM is used to implement real CI/CD for our application. So when we enable the poll SCM, it is going to check the repository. If any new commit happened to the repository, then automatically the Jenkins job is going to execute and it is going to perform the build and deployment. Now, so do you know what is a post build action in the Jenkins job? Do you know what is post build action in the Jenkins job? By using post build action, we are going to deploy that war file to the Tomcat container. Tomcat container is running in AWS cloud. Good. So this is what we have done in the previous session. And yesterday, we had the doubt session. Some people are facing the problems. Yesterday, some people are facing the problems, so we have resolved the problems that are facing by our students in the class. Okay, cool. Now, let's start our next session in the Jenkins. The next session in the Jenkins is pipeline. What is that concept, guys? Jenkins pipeline. Jenkins pipeline is nothing but sequence of sequence of jobs execution is called as a pipeline. Sequence of jobs execution is called as pipeline. Sequence of jobs execution is called as pipeline. Now, for our application, we will have multiple environments. For our application, we will have multiple environments like below. So can you tell me what environments will be available, guys? Dev environment will be available. Sit environment will be available for our application. Then UAT environment will be available. Pilot environment will be available. And prod environment also will be available. Now, like this, for our application, multiple environments will be available. Pilot is nothing but pre-prod. SIT, some people call it as a staging environment also in the real time. Some people will call it as a staging environment. SIT environment is called as a staging environment. And pilot environment is called as pre-prod environment. For our application, we will have multiple environments like below. To deploy the application to environments, we will create Jenkins jobs. For every environment, one Jenkins job will be created. One Jenkins job will be created. I mean to say that dev job will be available. Jenkins dev job will be deploying the application to dev environment. Similarly, to deploy the application to sit environment, Jenkins sit job will be available, which will perform build and deployment activities in sit environment. Okay. Now, when you go for Jenkins UAT job, that will be deploying the application to UAT environment of our application. Similarly, for pilot environment also, we will be having a job. I mean to say, for every environment, job will be available. For every environment, job will be available to deploy our application. Now, Jenkins prod job will be available. Jenkins prod job will be available, which is going to deploy the application to production environment. Are you clear with my point? So here, sequence of jobs execution is called as a pipeline. For our application, we will have multiple environments like below. Already we discussed about environments. Environment, nothing but a platform which is used to run our application. For our application, we will have multiple environments like below: dev environment, sit environment, UAT environment, pilot environment, prod environment. Dev environment will be used by the developers for testing, developers for integration testing. SIT environment will be used by testers to test our application. UAT nothing but user acceptance testing. Client will use the environment to test our application. Pilot is a pre-production testing. Then prod is the live environment. In order, we need to deploy the application to all these environments, guys. We need to deploy our application to all these environments as part of our application development and delivery. Once the developer completed the code, directly we are not going to deploy in the production. Production means live environment. Before giving the code to the production, that application will be deployed to several environments for the testing purpose. Now, in order to deploy the application to these many environments, we are going to automate that build and deployment process by using Jenkins. Right now, here for every environment, a dedicated Jenkins job will be created. So to deploy the application to dev environment, dev job will be available. So when you execute the dev job is going to deploy application to the server which is running in the dev environment. That means a dev server. It is going to do the deployment in the dev server. Dev environment nothing but a server will be available in the dev machine. Now here SIT server will be available. That means a separate machine, a separate server. Now here UAT server will be available. Whenever you run the UAT job, it is going to deploy the application to UAT server. Similarly, pilot server will be available and prod server also will be available to deploy our application. Now, guys, whenever we create these jobs, right, there is a one bug. There is a bug. When we get that bug, right, now I have fixed that bug as a developer. I have committed my code to Git repository. Then I have deployed my code in the dev environment. Whatever the change that we have done, that change we need to deploy into multiple environments. So for every environment, one job is available. So first I have executed the dev job. My changes, whatever the code I have changed, the code is deployed into dev server. Once it is deployed into dev server, if the build is successful in the dev environment, then I will go and run the SIT job so that the code will be deployed to SIT environment. Once the SIT server deployment successful, then I will run the UAT job. Once the UAT is successful, then I will run the pilot. Once the pilot is successful, then I will run the prod job to deploy my application to production. So here I have 6 jobs to execute. First, I will execute the dev job. If the dev job is successful, that means if the dev deployment is successful, I want to do SIT deployment. If SIT is successful, then I want to do UAT deployment. If UAT is successful, I want to do pilot deployment. If pilot is successful, then I want to go for prod deployment. So like this, manually, we need to go and run each and every job. Instead of running the jobs manually, we can create a Jenkins pipeline. That is nothing but sequence of jobs is called as a pipeline. So what I will tell to this pipeline, what I will do in this pipeline is, I will create a Jenkins job to deploy to the dev environment. Then when I'm creating a SIT job, I will tell that if the dev job execution successful, immediately my SIT job should execute. If a SIT job execution successful, UAT job should execute. If UAT is successful, pilot should execute. If the pilot is successful, then prod should be executed. That is called as pipeline. Now, are you guys able to understand what is a pipeline in the Jenkins now? Are you guys able to understand what is a pipeline in the Jenkins? Pipeline is nothing but sequence of jobs execution. Set of jobs execution is called as a pipeline. So if one job is executed successfully, then I want to start the next job execution immediately. That we can achieve by using pipeline. Now let's go to Google. Jenkins pipeline. Jenkins pipeline. Can you see the image of what is a Jenkins pipeline? Jenkins pipeline. If one job is successful, then I want to execute the next job immediately. This is build pipeline. So Jenkins build pipeline is going to display like this. Build pipeline, copy this image. Now I'm going to take this. Now pipeline, job 1, job 2, job 3. So job 1, job 2, job 3 is available. Now, first I will execute one job. If the job 1 is successful, then immediately job 2 should start. If the job 2 is successful, immediately job 3 should start. This is job 1 I will use for dev environment. This I will make it as a dev job. This one I will make it as a sit job. This one I will make it as a UAT job. Dev job, sit job, and UAT job. So when we are creating the jobs, we can configure like this. If dev job is successful, then immediately execute the sit job. If the sit job is executed successfully, then go for UAT job. Then go for UAT job. Now, let's log in into our AWS console and see that start the Jenkins server. Once the Jenkins is started, then you can see that how to create a pipeline. Let me log in into AWS Management Console. Sign in. What happened? Yep. Go to EC2. So there is a EC2 instance in which my Jenkins server is running. Let me start that EC2 and let me access that Jenkins. Let me connect to the EC2 and let me start the Jenkins. Yep. Now, so this is my VM, dev VM that I have created, choosed instance state, or else let me make it as, let me rename it as Jenkins server. In this machine, my Jenkins server is running. Instance state, start. I'm starting my Jenkins server. I'm starting my Jenkins server. Once it started successfully, then we can connect to that and we can access our Jenkins dashboard. Yes, it started successfully. Copy the public IP. Go to here, mobile extra. Connect to this session. EC2 user. Advanced SSH. Private key. PEM file. Okay. We have connected to that. Sudo systemctl status Jenkins. Now, my Jenkins server is running. Let me go to the browser. Let me go to the browser, public IP colon 8080. I'm trying to access my Jenkins. Let me log in into Jenkins. Fine. Logged in into Jenkins. So Ashok IT dev job, right? Here, there are some jobs available in the Jenkins. Now, whenever we are creating a new job, or we can edit the existing job also, we can make sure that we can make it as a pipeline. Okay, now, so see here, when we go to the Jenkins dashboard, new item, when we are creating a freestyle project, for example, I'm creating as a Ashok IT dev job. Already I think the job is available, right? Go to dashboard, Ashok IT dev job is available. Now I want to create one more new job, Ashok IT sit job, Ashok IT SIT job I want to create, Ashok IT SIT job. It is responsible to deploy my application to, it is responsible to deploy my application to sit environment. Go to source code management, configure the Git. Now, here, can you see build triggers option? Build after other projects are built, projects to watch. Now, so here I'm trying to create a job called SIT job. So what I will tell to the SIT job is, hey, SIT job, you need to execute. I'm going to configure a trigger condition. If I configure poll SCM, whenever there is a change, then this job is going to execute. Build periodically. I can write the cron expression for that. Or else I'm going to select this option, build after other projects are built. Ashok IT dev job. Now I'm going to configure build trigger as Ashok IT dev job. So what is the meaning of that? If this Ashok IT dev job is executed successfully, then Ashok IT sit job should be executed. That is what the configuration I'm going to do here. So Ashok IT dev job is available. Ashok IT sit job is available. Ashok IT dev job is having a poll SCM trigger. If you go to Ashok IT dev job, configure, here if you go to build trigger condition, there is a poll SCM. Whenever the commit happened to the repository, then Ashok IT dev job is going to execute. Whenever the code committed to Git repository, then Ashok IT dev job is executed. And for the sit job, I have configured this as build trigger as Ashok IT dev job. Projects to watch Ashok IT dev job. If this Ashok IT dev job is executed successfully, then automatically the sit job execution is going to start. That is what we are creating as sequence of jobs. That is what we are creating as a sequence of jobs. Here, dev job is created, sit job will be created. Similarly, UAT job also will be created. Now, dev job we have created with the trigger condition as poll SCM. For this, the trigger condition is poll SCM. That means whenever the code modified in the Git repository, then this poll SCM, this dev job should be executed. For the SIT job, I have configured dev job. I have configured watch dev job. Watch dev job. For this, I am going to configure watch sit job. So what is the meaning of that? Here, whenever code is modified in the Git repository, I mean to say when the commit happened in the Git repository, then immediately dev job is going to execute. If the dev job is executed successfully, then immediately sit job will start. If the sit job is executed successfully, then UAT job is going to start. This is called as sequence of jobs. So in your project, if you want to deploy the code into multiple environments, depends on the condition, then you can go for this sequence of jobs. The process of creating sequence of jobs, the process of creating sequence of jobs in the Jenkins is called as a build pipeline. Pipeline nothing but a queue. First one job will be created, it is a base job. Then sit job will be created based on the dev job. UAT job will be created based on the sit job. In the sit job, the trigger condition is dev. If the dev is successful, then only sit should be executed. If sit is successful, then only UAT should be executed. Like that, we are going to create sequence of jobs. All right. Now, here, whenever we are creating a job, right, we will go to new item. You enter this and you will create a freestyle project. Now, we don't want to create the freestyle project. I want to create a pipeline. Enter the name for the pipeline. Now I will give it as Ashok IT pipeline. I will select this pipeline option. I will click on OK. Now, when I'm creating the pipeline, it is asking several details for me. It is asking several details for me. You can write some sample script also. GitHub plus Maven, pipeline script, build script that you can write here. Pipeline script we can write. Pipeline script for SCM. SCM you can configure. Git SCM. Repository URL you can configure. Build branch you can configure. Script path Jenkins file also you can create. Like this, you can create a build pipeline you can create a build pipeline in the Jenkins. By using that pipeline, we are going to execute the jobs in the sequential manner. So if you see this diagram, then you will understand how the jobs are going to execute. So all these three jobs will be created as a pipeline, sequence of jobs. Sequence of jobs. Execution is called as pipeline. For our application, we will have multiple environments like this. In every environment, one Jenkins job will be created. So like this. Now, so here by using pipeline, we can execute the jobs in the sequence. If we want to deploy code changes to all environments, if we want to deploy code changes to all environments, then it is recommended to go for pipeline. It is recommended to create build pipeline. Build pipeline. By using build pipeline, we can deploy, we can execute Jenkins jobs. We can execute Jenkins jobs sequentially. That means if dev job is successful, then I want to execute sit job. If sit job is successful, then I want to execute UAT like this. Requirement. If commit happened in the Git, if code commit happened in GitHub, then deploy code into dev server. If dev server deployment is successful, then deploy code into sit environment. Okay. If sit server deployment is successful, if sit server deployment successful, then deploy code into UAT environment. So for these three jobs, we can create a pipeline. By using this pipeline, we can achieve this requirement. Guys, now you got the clarity what is Jenkins pipeline and when we need to go for Jenkins pipeline, for which requirement we can implement Jenkins pipeline. Are you guys getting my point? No. So pipeline is nothing but sequence of jobs. So when you want to deploy the code into multiple environments, instead of you are executing the jobs manually, you can create a pipeline. And when you execute the build pipeline, it is going to start the dev job. If the dev job is executed successfully, then I want to start the sit job automatically. If sit job is executed successfully, then I want to start the UAT job automatically. That can be created by using build pipeline. Now guys, in order to do this pipeline implementation, what we need to do first? In order to do this pipeline implementation, what we need to do first? First, we need to prepare the environments. So do you know what is environment preparation? Do you know what is environment preparation? Come on. Do you know what is environment preparation now? Tell me guys, what is environment preparation now? So what we need to do now is, we need to set up multiple virtual machines. Now, so first I'm going to take one EC2. In this, I will install the Tomcat. That Tomcat I will be calling as a dev Tomcat, dev server. I'm going to take one EC2 instance. In this EC2 instance, I'm going to install Tomcat server. So this Tomcat server, I will be calling as a dev server. Are you guys clear with my point? Right. Similarly, I'm going to take another EC2 instance. I'm going to take another EC2 instance, and I will be taking another EC2 instance. So total 3 EC2 instances I'm going to take. One EC2 instance is called as a dev server. Second EC2 instance is called as a sit server. Third EC2 instance is called as a UAT server. Okay. Tomcat server is available in the EC2 VM, that is called as a dev server. This one, I will be calling it as a sit server, a different machine in that Tomcat server will be running. And I will be taking another VM. Here I am going to install a Tomcat. This one I am going to call as a UAT server. So now total, how many environments are available? How many environments are available for our application now? Total 3 environments are available for our application. Dev environment, sit environment, and UAT environment. I want to deploy the code into these environments. Now, here I am going to take one more EC2. I'm going to take one more EC2. In this EC2, I am going to install Jenkins server. I'm taking one more EC2. In this EC2, I will be installing Jenkins software. In this EC2, I will be installing Jenkins software. Jenkins software. In this Jenkins software, I will be creating a dev job. A dev job will be created in my EC2 Jenkins software. Then I am going to create one more thing called as a sit job. I will be creating a sit job in the Jenkins. Then I will be creating UAT job. I will be creating one UAT job. Every job is responsible to deploy my application to environment. Dev job is responsible to deploy the application to dev environment. Sit job is responsible to deploy the application to sit environment. UAT job is responsible to deploy the application to UAT server. That means UAT environment. My dev job should deploy the application to this dev server. Dev server will have one IP address, right? So now let's assume that the dev server IP is some 172.1.1.0. Okay, that is the IP of the dev server. Now here, this dev server is having some different IP, some 192.168.1.0, right? Here, this Tomcat, which is having in the UAT, it is having a different IP, 38.0.1.5. So there are three different IPs are available because these are 3 different VMs. They are running in the AWS cloud. Now, so first I will create one EC2 virtual EC2 instance. I will install a Tomcat server. I will call it as a dev server. I will take another EC2 instance. I will install a Tomcat server. In that EC2 instance, I will call it as a sit server. That means application which is ready for testing, that will be deployed to sit server. Then I'm going to take a UAT server. I will take one virtual machine. In that I will install a Tomcat server. I will call it as a UAT server. Now, once my environment preparation completed, total 3 EC2 instances I'm going to create, and I will install the servers in the each EC2 instance. Then I'm going to take my Jenkins. I'm going to take the Jenkins in one EC2 instance. In that Jenkins, I will be installing Maven and Java. Git client also you can install in the Jenkins. Once it is done, we are going to create 3 jobs in the Jenkins. Now, do you want to execute 3 jobs individually, or you want to execute the 3 jobs in the sequence? First, I will execute a dev. If dev is a success, I want to execute sit. If sit is a success, I want to execute UAT. So now I want to execute these jobs in the sequence. So if you want to execute these jobs in the sequence, then you need to create a pipeline. We need to create a pipeline for this Jenkins. Now here we have our Git repository. The source code is available in GitHub. So Git repo is available for our project. The Git repo is available in GitHub. All these jobs will be taking the code from Git repo only. Now, dev job will be connected to the Git repo. Sit job also connected to the Git repo. and UAT job also connected to the Git repo. So now here developers will be available who are responsible to commit the changes to Git repository. Continuously, the code will be committing to Git repository by the developers. Developers will be integrating their code in the Git repository. When the developer's code is integrated, that code should be deployed into our dev environment. If dev is successful, then it should be deployed into sit environment. If sit is successful, then it should be deployed to UAT environment. Like this, we want to perform build and deployment activity of our application. So here you can create the environments like this and manually you can deploy this. If at all, if you want to deploy the code by using a pipeline, then if you want to execute the jobs in the sequence, then you can create a build pipeline in the Jenkins. You can create a build pipeline. So in the build pipeline, I'm going to configure dev job as my initial job. So whenever I execute a build pipeline, first dev job should be executed. If the dev job is successful, then my sit job should execute. If the sit job is successful, then my UAT job should execute it. So do you know how to configure the sit job? The sit job should be executed when the dev is success. So whenever you are creating the job only, you can configure build trigger. When this is sit job, I'm creating a new job called sit job, SIT job, software system integration testing. For the sit job, I'm giving the build trigger as trigger only if build is stable, or build after other projects are built, Ashok IT dev job. If this Ashok IT dev job is stable, that means if it is success, then only trigger this sit job. Like this, we can create the job by depending on the other job. We can create a job by depending on the other job. Once the jobs are created, then we can create a pipeline. Once our jobs are ready, then we can create a pipeline. How to create a pipeline? Go to new item. Here you can enter whatever you want and you can select a pipeline and click on OK. Now discard old bills. Do not allow current bills. Do not allow the pipeline to resume. GitHub project, pipeline speed, build trigger. When you want to trigger this, advanced project options, pipeline script. If you want, you can configure the script also to execute that. Pipeline syntax is also available for us. You can go with them and you can create a pipeline. Are you guys able to understand? New item, pipeline, enter some name for that, click on OK. Build general description, build triggers, go to build triggers, go to advanced project options and go to a pipeline. Use Groovy sandbox. Like that, you can write some pipeline scripting also to execute this pipeline so that the jobs will be executed in the sequence. So before going to execute the pipeline, before going to execute this pipeline, what is the first step that we need to do? Before going to create a pipeline, what is the first step that we need to do? What is the first step that we need to do? Come on, guys. We need to do our environment setup. So what is the meaning of environment setup? What is the meaning of environment setup? Create EC2 instance, install Tomcat server. How many EC2 instances we need today? How many EC2 instances we need total now? 4 EC2 instances we need. One EC2 instance is for Jenkins, 3 EC2 instances for 3 servers. So total we need to create 4 EC2 instances now. So now creating steps to create Jenkins pipeline. First, create EC2 VM and install Tomcat server. I will be calling it as dev server. Okay. Next one, create EC2 VM and install Tomcat server. I will call it as sit server. Then create EC2 VM and install Tomcat server. 3 times you need to do. I'm calling it as UAT server. I'm calling it as UAT server. Then create EC2 VM and install Jenkins. Install Jenkins. Install Git, install JDK, Maven, and Git. Install JDK, Maven, Git, deploy to container in the EC2 in which Jenkins software installed. Are you getting my point? Here we are creating one EC2, and in that EC2 we are installing Tomcat server. That EC2 I'm calling as a dev server. And here I'm creating one EC2. In that also I'm installing Tomcat server. I'm calling that as a SIT server. Then I will take another EC2. In that I will install the Tomcat server. We will call it as a UAT server. Now create EC2 VM and install Jenkins. So now here I will call it as Jenkins server, dev server VM, and this is called as SIT server VM, and this is called as UAT server VM. It is called as Jenkins server VM. Install JDK, Maven, Git, deploy to container in Jenkins server VM. In Jenkins server VM. Then after that, create jobs in Jenkins server. So what are the jobs we are going to create in the Jenkins server? First, I will create a dev job that should build and deploy to dev server. Okay, now I want to create one SIT job. SIT job should deploy the code into SIT server. Now, IP address of the VMs will be same, or the IP address of the VMs will be different. IP address will be different. Three servers running in the 3 machines now. I'm taking 3 machines to deploy my application. So this one, I will call it as UAT server. Now, so first we need to do these activities, guys. So total 4 EC2 instances we have to create. In 3 EC2 instances, we are installing the Tomcat server. In the 4th EC2 instance, we are installing the Jenkins server. In the Jenkins VM, in the Jenkins server VM, we are installing Java, we are installing Maven, Git, deploy to container, and we are going to create the jobs in the Jenkins server. Now, SIT job should be deployed to SIT environment. SIT job should execute if dev job is stable. Next one, UAT job should execute if SIT job is stable. What is the meaning of if SIT job is stable? If SIT job is executed successfully, then only my EAT job should be executed. When the SIT job should execute if dev job is stable. UAT job should execute if SIT job is stable. Then finally, create a build pipeline to execute the jobs in the sequence. Create Jenkins build pipeline. Create Jenkins build pipeline to execute jobs in sequence. To execute the jobs in sequence. Are you guys able to understand what is the Jenkins pipeline and why we need to go for Jenkins pipeline and how to prepare the environment to work with the Jenkins pipeline? Okay. Fine, guys. Now, so first we need to create these instances, guys. So I'm giving the time today. So please prepare this environment before coming to tomorrow's session. because you need to create EC2, 3 EC, 4 EC2 instances. Now, whatever the EC2 instances that you are having already, you terminate all your EC2 instances. Whatever the EC2 instances you have, you terminate everything and do it from the scratch so that it will become a practice for you. So create one EC2, install the Tomcat. Then you can name it as a dev server. Create one EC2 and install the Tomcat. You can name it as a SIT. Create one EC2, install the Tomcat, make it as a UAT. Then create a EC2 and make it as a Jenkins and install the Jenkins server in that. In the VM only, in this Jenkins, configure JDK, configure Maven, configure Git, configure deploy to container plugin. Once all this setup is completed, then go and create the jobs in the Jenkins. Guys, here, whenever we are creating the jobs, right, we need to configure the URL of the Tomcat. We will face a small problem here. We are using public IP. The public IP will be changed whenever we restart the Tomcat. Okay. So for that, we can go for Elastic IP, but Elastic IPs are not for free. They are chargeable. Okay. Today, what you will do is you just create the 4 EC2 instances and install all the softwares which are required in the 4 EC2 instances and keep it ready. In the tomorrow session, I will show you how to create this pipeline and how to execute the Jenkins pipeline. That we will discuss in the tomorrow session. So can you guys set up this environment up to 6 steps? Can you complete before coming to tomorrow session? Can you complete 6 steps before coming to tomorrow session? Can I call it as assignment for you today? Today's assignment, you guys work on this part before coming to tomorrow's session, so that tomorrow I will be creating that Jenkins pipeline for you. You can take EC2, T2 micro, you can take it. T2 micro you can take, which is free tier eligible. T2 micro only you can take, which is free tier eligible for you. Okay, guys, because we are just installing a Tomcat server, na? The T2 micro is sufficient. The T2 micro is sufficient. T2 micro is sufficient. T2 micro instance, you can take it. So I'm expecting that everybody will be ready with this environment before coming to tomorrow, so that tomorrow we can work on the build pipelines. Got it? Fine, guys. Thank you. With this, I'm stopping for today. We'll continue in the tomorrow session. Thank you. Bye-bye. See you tomorrow.